Hello and happy new week. Hope you had a great weekend. Mary Alice here. I had a great weekend and I had the nice opportunity to speak at a wonderful event called the Sunday Gathering. And you can look that up on Facebook. And you can look it up under either We Don't Die Radio or Sandra Champlain. You'll hear more about this because, again, I'm going to share with you my experience with the beyond. I'll do that soon. I will. And today I want to talk about living in default as opposed to on purpose. And the majority of the population lives by default. And what do I mean by that? Well, I want to use Plato's allegory. I like it very much. Plato, back in the day, about 2,400 years ago, maybe, he talked about the story of 3 people growing up in a cave. They were hostage in this cave, and they were only allowed to look at the wall in front of them, and they couldn't move their heads. And there was a fire behind them for warmth, and the fire brought shadows. And with the shadows, they could see people just by shadow going back and forth and around, and they could kind of see outlines of things. Now, can you imagine growing up in a cave, and this is all you saw, this is all what you believed, or this is all you knew, that's all you knew. One day, one of them escaped and got outside. Now you can imagine being in the dark. The sun must have been overwhelming for them. Plato talks about it. It was very, very bright, very bright. But as his eyes adjusted, he noticed shadows, because that's what he was used to, but he could hardly believe the reality of what he was seeing. The trees, people walking by, animals, plants. Anything he saw, it was very hard for this person to think that was what reality is like, that almost like it was a dream for him, because he could recognize shadows, but not the real stuff, not what was real. He lived in ignorance and naivety, right? That's all he knew. In time, he grew to understand that these things were real and you can touch them, you could feel them, you can taste them. Now he went back to the cave to tell people about this, about his experience. He was talking to the other hostages, the other people who were there who grew up in this cave with him. They didn't believe him. They thought he was just a crazy man. They just would not accept one thing he was saying. If you think about it, in our world today, there are so many people who live by default. Because if we use the analogy of the cave to one person's environment, let's say, they grow up, they're in a home, they have a community, they're affiliated with a religious church or temple or organization. That's all they know. And they believe it with all their heart. They've been told what to believe. And they've only seen what they've seen. They've only experienced what they've experienced, which is very much goes along the line with how they grew up. They live in that environment. They've never gotten out of their mind cave, so to speak. It doesn't make it all bad. There are good things people learn and grow in and develop and have good habits and good thoughts. But when it comes to the expansion of the mind, when it comes to understanding more reality of what's out there in the world, they can't comprehend it. They can't believe that anything is different than what they know. And many have been taught never to believe anything else, or something bad will happen. And that is so disheartening and sad in our society and in this world. I think many of us are getting out of the cave, so to speak. Many of us are exploring and finding out new things, finding out about life, people, places, and things. And it's wonderful. And it's enlightening. And it brings education. And it brings a new sense of reality. The world is a big place. And beyond the world is even a bigger place. If we think of the cosmos, if we think of the galaxies and the universe. And then beyond that, we think of the great beyond, as people would say. Heaven, spirit world, whatever you want to call it. That's even bigger. Excuse me, I'm going to take a sip of water. So if we go back and think about the things we've discussed already and how we've grown up, and we can personalize this story. And I'll use myself as an example. I think that's probably a good thing to do, not to step on anybody else's privacy and not have their permission. I have a lot of stories, but I just haven't talked to people about getting their permission to share. So I'm just going to share my own. And you're very familiar with it because I've shared it with you. Being brought up in a big household, I had a lot of siblings, 7. I had 6 sisters and 1 brother. My brother now is deceased, but I grew up in a big family, and I was in the middle. It was a Catholic family. It was in a nice neighborhood with lots of other families who went to the same school. I was being abused at home behind closed doors. Nobody knew it, obviously. I was being bullied. And then also having dyslexia on top of all that. So I had learning difficulties as well. And as I shared with you, I was one big loser in the world. I wasn't lovable. I wasn't worth anything. I wasn't smart. And I believed that. I believed it. There was no one else telling me anything different. But the way I was being treated confirmed those beliefs in me, those thoughts. And that's the cave that I lived in for quite a while. And marrying young, I was 19, thought I knew everything. I married young, and it was, and I shared with you, it was a difficult marriage for 26 years. It wasn't easy, but it was my classroom. Now, here's where we have the opportunity to step out of the cave. I think we all have many opportunities to step out of our mind cave. And it takes many opportunities before we even step one foot out into the sunlight, so to speak. Because again, pain is our teacher. And when we hurt enough, we'll leave that place. We'll get help. We'll look forward. We want different. We want to feel different. We want to know different. And what's sad is some people in their environment or communities or families, like I said earlier, are told never to believe anything else. You have to believe what we believe or else. And that fear is put into them. Now, as we know, if people want something done, or if people want to be voted for, they use fear. It's unfounded, it's not real, it's ridiculous. But it's used because people don't want to be afraid. They don't think past the shadow on the wall. It's hard for them to understand that what they're being told is a bunch of baloney. And I know in my life, as I got older and exposed to different people and friends and surroundings and gatherings, I could observe others. I could observe others' happiness and their self-confidence. I could observe their families, happy family, nice people. I could observe different religions. I could observe the arts, music, art. Of course, I grew up in a very cultured family, I should say. So it wasn't, but it expanded for me. And let me put it this way, having been exposed to that was the best thing in my life my mother could have done for me. And so watching for it, being aware of it, attending symphonies or going to galleries for me was eye-opening and beautiful. And for that moment in time, I could just imagine and be grateful for what I was seeing or hearing. And that opened up my mind more. Now, emotionally, remember we talked about emotional intelligence, parts of me weren't that smart. That inner child of mine just kept wanting to take over and just defend me at all costs. And so when I would feel less than or criticized or put down, that part of me would rise up. The child in me would rise up. But as we discussed, that inner child is not an adult. It's just stuck at that emotional level at that age of 8, 9, 10, whatever it was, doing the best she could to get through difficult situations. But as an adult, it didn't work anymore. So that part of me needed to step out of the cave, so to speak. And when that emotional pain got just too much and felt confusing, and it really felt like, no, things can be different. This doesn't have to be this way. Because I was observant, because I would read things, because I would watch people. And I thought, this isn't how it could be or should be. And then eventually getting help and understanding and seeing where I was. And so for me, that was emotionally stepping out of that cave. I wasn't in the dark anymore, living with shadows. I could understand myself better. And I could understand my emotional, the disconnect that I had from being an adult to that trigger where the little me would come forward and want to crumble and, just hide under the covers or bury myself somewhere, because I always felt horrible and less than and not worth it. And all those fun things that many of us feel sometimes, and those began to dissipate. And being more aware and having more understanding about myself, about the way I would think, or those subconscious occurrences that would pop up that I could begin to control and master and just practice. It's just being mindful and practicing. Having self-reflection is a good thing. I think I mentioned it a few weeks ago, like just taking time once in a while when it's quiet. You can jot things down and just think about how things used to be and how things are now for you emotionally. And maybe even with your thoughts. And how do you want things to be? How do you want them to be? Because we're always growing and learning. I don't think we ever really stop. But it's just being aware and being open to what's out there. Doesn't mean we accept everything. It doesn't mean that everything makes sense suddenly either. It's just kind of allowing ourselves to be aware And we know, I believe our intuition is very, it's looking out for us. And it will let us know, hey, that's something to look at. It's a good idea. What you think about that? Or pick up that book or talk to that person. Learn some more. Maybe there's a TED Talk, something like that. Ways in which we can learn and grow because it resonates with us. And there are ideas people have and philosophies that, to me, in my life, feel a little more negative and or harmful. So that doesn't resonate with me. I'm not drawn to that. I'm not drawn to darkness, more like a moth to light kind of thing. Show me the good stuff. I also, when we're young, and I'm going to talk about living in the United States here, I don't think it's happening that much. Well, I think it still is to some degree, but not as much, where we get this, what's the word I want? I don't know if I'm going to make up a word here, but something like patriotic egotism, being egotistical about our own country. We do live in a good country. This is beneficial. It is helpful. It is wonderful in many regards. It also has a lot of faults that we need to fix and trying to fix. Excuse me a second. Sorry. We're trying to fix these things. And we're trying to make sense of our democracy. And we're trying to bring it back with safety guards around it. But we are a country that lives in a very big world. And I remember when I was younger, probably junior high age, and excuse me, I take another drink. So sorry. When, studying history and the world and things, to be open to other cultures, countries, people, foods, traditions. Because at first it seems so odd. No, we're Americans. We're all that. We're cool. I'm like, no, we're not. We're not that cool. We live in a big world. And so opening up to other people around the world and their cultures and their belief systems and their foods and their traditions is eye-opening. And then you begin to realize, gosh, we really are a lot alike underneath the layers. Pardon me. We really are. Everybody seeks safety, connection, relationships, friendships, love. They want to love, they want to be loved. So underneath the differences, there's a lot of sameness with us. And that's the beauty of humanity. If we can connect on that level, it's really awesome. So if you think about going back to the cave of the analogy of Plato's, and those three people just growing up in a cave facing a wall and only seeing shadows, and they could talk to one another. They just could never leave, and they couldn't look around. That's so limiting. And I think it's a good analogy about our own limiting beliefs that are stuck within us. We have these limiting beliefs about ourselves that I did all those years when I was young, that I was worthless. I'm not worthless. That I was stupid. I'm not stupid. And that, what else did I say? I think every negative thing. I wasn't lovable. I'm lovable. And I love. That's who we truly are. It's the experiences that we have in life. And sometimes they're really hard for some of us, right? Some of us grew up in difficult homes. I started out this whole series on that. And how did that affect us? What are the belief systems that we developed about ourselves? Not good. And we try to hide it. We try to put our best foot forward and, show up in the world with a smile on our face, and just all the time, the energy it took to push down, I'm not worth it. If people really knew me, they wouldn't like me. That kind of feeling. Man, I struggled with that for a long time. High school, even in my 20s when I was a young adult, a young mother. Man, the things we do to ourselves, but we don't know different. That's called unconscious. Hang on a second. See, that word grew wings and flew away. Unconscious incompetence, which means I don't know what I don't know. So I just didn't know, and you didn't know. Nothing to judge or get down on yourself for. We just didn't know better. And then there's conscious incompetence, which means we kind of come to and we do know better. But are we still making the right choices? Or are we still acting like we don't know? Because it's a habit. And then there's conscious competence. And that's awesome. That's when we know and we do better. It's like Maya Angelou said, when we know better, we do better. And then we create a habit around that. We create goodness around that. We accept that and we just make it 180 and we change in our lives. We make the changes that are needed, whatever that might take. Sometimes it's really easy. Sometimes it just takes practice and being aware of our thoughts and our behavior. And then there's conscious, I already said conscious incompetence. But then there's conscious competence. That's when it's deep inside us. It gets into our subconscious and it's just normal now. Everything is, it's how it should be. We've gotten rid of all that old stuff, the old belief systems that were hurting us. They weren't enabling us in a good way. They weren't helping us. It was the fears that overtake us that we don't have to fear, because they're old patterns of thought. Now, don't get me wrong. We still have fears. That's okay. That's, it's probably healthy. I fear a truck coming in front of me. I'd run out of the way, right? Fear is good at, keeps us alive. But it's the ridiculous fears that we can hang on to. Like I just said, when I was very young, that fear of, if people really knew me, if they really knew what happened to me, they wouldn't like me. That's why I'm unlovable. That's why I'm not worth anything. That's those beliefs that get stuck like glue in our subconscious. And the inner child will act on those beliefs, thinking it's protecting us, and it's really not, because we're adults now. That's why I emphasize emotional intelligence is so very important. We can observe our own reactions to things. Again, don't judge it, but just observe. Like the other day, I kind of was like, I was on edge and I kind of lost patience with something that I was doing. Thankfully, it wasn't a person. I was like, I gotta, and I'm like, what is going on? Usually I'm like, oh, well, okay, I'll try it again. That's usually what I go to. But I was like really frustrated. And I thought, when I reflected on that, well, you know what? I am so tired. It's late. I shouldn't even be attempting this now. No wonder this is upsetting me. Why don't I go to sleep, have a good night's rest, and then tackle it tomorrow, and it'll be all better. And that's exactly what happened. Sometimes when we can reflect on our reaction instead of a response, we can see what's happening. Oh gosh, I'm hungry. My blood sugar's low. I really need to eat something. I wonder I'm kind of dragging. Sometimes we can just observe our own self and see the problem right away if we take time to do it and then fix it. Sometimes it's a little deeper. Sometimes there are issues that may need some counseling, someone to talk to about how to disconnect from old belief systems and old reactions. That's okay. We need one another. We need help sometimes. I know I have. There's nothing wrong with that either. That's excellent. It's good for us. So let's talk about living on purpose, okay? That's a fun one. As we come out of that cave and we're into the light, we're getting used to the light, so to speak, and things begin to feel more positive and brighter and beautiful and wonderful and not scary anymore. And we're seeing life in a much better way, in a much better mindset. It's in this place where we can begin to figure out, well, how do I want to live? What do I want to do? What do I want to create? When we're in the more bright mindset, the sun shining on us, so to speak, in our minds, we have an open mind, we have time to sit in reflection, we have time to sit in meditation, we have time just to be in the moment and see where we are and feel into it. I love those moments, just forgetting everything else, Yeah, I've got that to do. Yes, I need to make that phone call. Just kind of put it on a shelf for a minute. Just sit in the present moment, being aware of your own breath, being aware of what's around you, looking at things, admiring them for things that you might have walked by a million times and never paid attention to, being grateful for it, for the light switch across the room or the lamp or a plant you might have in your house that's really beautiful and it's growing. Just being mindful. It's in that place where we can kind of figure out, well, how do I want to live? What is it that I want to accomplish? And we can have big goals or little goals. We can have many goals, many things, and even throughout the day, just daily. And we can accomplish those one by one. And sometimes some of those goals to accomplish take days, weeks, months, maybe years. But just staying on course. And when we're on that journey, you know what it is? It's like going after that goal, that dream, and working on it a lot every day or a little bit every day. Sometimes we have obstacles in our way, but we get around them. That's developing us. That's us growing and learning and building character and strength and knowing that we can get past difficulties and creating solutions to problems. So it's not just getting to the goal line. It's who we become in the meantime. And it's realizing, yeah, we can have external goals. We can go for something we really want to achieve and go for that. But it's who we become in the meantime. How do we want to live? In character and integrity, those are great goals to have. Because while we go after the external goals, maybe a career path or a hobby you really, really want to be accomplished in, or whatever, singing, art, engineering, doesn't matter. It's who do you become in the meantime? And having the inner understanding and values, like we just talked about, and goals of, gosh, I want to improve that in me. I want to improve my patience. I want to improve not judging. I want to improve being kind or smiling to strangers. I want to improve where I can be of service instead of ignoring opportunities to. And it's those things that we do throughout our life that help grow us up, that help make that light brighter inside us. It doesn't necessarily take difficulties away, but I think it does help us tackle difficulties with a much better mindset than we might have in the past. Maybe kind of giving up too soon or feeling like, this isn't working, or I don't know what to do, or into thoughts of, I'll figure this out. I can figure this out. And I can find people to help me on that path to figure this out. Whatever it takes. Challenges don't seem as overwhelming because we know we have what it takes. And that's a wonderful thing. And that's definitely being out of the cave. And I love that. I love that analogy of Plato's. I think it can mean many different things, but this is how I'm using it. And our minds are beautiful when we polish them up and when we get rid of what we can from the past that holds us back, that makes us feel miserable about ourselves. And believe me, I still have moments like that. I do. After speaking somewhere or doing something, and I'll go, oh man, I blew it. I could have done better. I shouldn't have said that, or I forgot to say that, and immediately my tendency is to beat myself up. Well, where did that come from? That's old stuff. That's old stuff that still kind of wants to hang around. But when we develop the tools to go, no, you did your best. You did exactly what you needed to do, and you did your best in that project or with that person or whatever the situation is. If we know we show up with a good attitude and we're doing our best for that day or whatever we're working on, that's good. We can go to bed at night going, I did my best. I gave it my all. And acknowledge, say, oh gosh, I did forget to say that, or I did forget that one thing, but I'll do that. I'll do that tomorrow. We don't have to beat ourselves up. That's the worst thing we can do. How many people are out there doing what you're doing? Or have the courage to do it? Or even the thought of doing it? You know what I mean? That's what's so amazing. And I know in this world of constant connection and social media and everything, I know I get that tendency to think, oh boy, so-and-so's doing that better. Oh, they're saying that. Oh, they're speaking. They're smarter than I am. They're able to discuss things better than I can. That kind of thing, that kind of mindset. Why should I even try? I know I felt that for years, thought that. There's only one of you, and there's only one of me. There's only one of them. And not everybody is going to be drawn to one person due to experience or age or even their gender or what they're into or what they're doing or how they identify. Not everybody is going to be listening to just one person. And I learned that over time, that it's okay. You have a voice. I have a voice. We all have our talents and abilities. We all know what we're drawn to and what we enjoy and what we're passionate about. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. You can. You can. It can be anything. I don't know what you're going after, what you want to do, but live on purpose. Live on purpose. Sometimes we might slip back down into that default mode, but you know what? We can get back out of it. We can just immediately close the door to that in our minds. We don't have to believe everything we think and feel. And I think that's the trip up. Feelings tell us stories, and so does our thoughts, but it doesn't mean we have to, invest in them or believe in them, especially if they're wrong, if they make us feel bad and guilty or wrong for something we didn't do or old patterns. Get rid of that. You don't need it. Just walk forward, walk through that door and slam that old door, leave the other stuff behind. I apologize. I don't know what's going on. I was fine earlier. It's always when I'm on here. Oh gosh. Anyway, I think I'm going to leave it at that for today. I do trust that this made sense for you, that I was sharing. There is more to this, but I think maybe I'll bring it up on Friday. What time is it now? Okay, we're good. I may talk a little more about this on Friday. I know there's more to talk about too, but I did really want to bring this up because that living by default mode, living in the cave, the mind cave, the best that we can, we need to get out of it. And I want to just say this, anybody who's listening to me, anybody who's listened to any of the recordings, you are showing up for yourself. You just want to learn more. You want to know more. You want to expand. You want to develop. Otherwise, why would you be here? And why would I be doing this if I didn't want that for myself and for other people? Now, I know that I can just lead, it's like, the old saying goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But I do believe that this is so important. Thank you, Sherry. I appreciate that. I love going over this topic too, because it helps me. Every time I go on here and I'm doing research and looking up things, it just is a reminder for me too. I keep learning too every day. So thank you for being here. And any comments, anybody who's watched the recording later, feel free to comment. I do get notifications. And I'll see you Friday. Thank you. Blessings to you today. Bye-bye.